Today, I guess the session is quite related. I mean, the two talks will be heavily related. So the first one is by Quentin Cormier. We will talk about oscillations in the two talk, I guess, from the title. And the first one is for mean field model in spike or for spiking neurons. So Quentin, it's your turn.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, first of all, thank you very much for this event and for the nice talks last week and yesterday, and for giving me the opportunity to present my work. So, so this is part of my thesis under the supervision of Étienne Denré and Romain Weltz at INRIA Sophia Antipolis, so in the south of France. And so I have been studying networks of neurons. So those are biological neurons of the type integrate and fire. And the neurons all interact one with the others. And so we have, under suitable assumptions, the networks will admit a mean field descriptions through a Makin-Vlasov stochastic differential equations. And so the questions I have been interested in is to understand this limit, so this Makin-Vlasov equations, which corresponds to the mean field descriptions of the networks, and in particular to better understand its long time behavior. And so I took somehow a dynamical system point of view. So I wonder, for instance, what are the invariant probability measure of these mean field equations? In the same way that for ODEs, for instance, you wonder what are the equilibrium points. And I wonder what can we say about their stability. So either global stability or local stability. And so we shall see that to say something interesting about the stability, in general, it's more interesting to look at local stability. We can say more, and that means that if you start from a probability measure which is close to the invariant probability measure you consider, you wonder, do you converge to it? Do you converge to the invariant probability measure? And if you think about it, this question is very much related to the talks of Christophe yesterday, if you were there, because the invariant probability measures of these Makin-Vlasov equations, they are natural candidates to be metastable state. And in particular, so if you have an invariant probability measure to the Makin-Vlasov equations, which is at least locally stable, this might be good candidates to be a metastable state. So this is the first motivation of this work. And the second motivations may be more important in terms of applications is I was wondering if the systems can oscillate. And so we shall see that by choosing correctly the parameters, the system exhibits spontaneous oscillations, and so it's really it's quite interesting to understand at which for which parameter does this phenomenon occur, and what is the frequency of the oscillations, what can we say about the periodic solutions, and so on. And the strategy I have taken here is to study the existence of oscillations near unstable equilibrium point, near unstable invariant probability measure. So in other words, I study the up bifurcations of the Makin-Vlasov stochastic differential equation. So the outline is the following. I will first present the particle system, so the system with capital N neurons. And I will explain how to formally we can take the limit n goes to infinity and obtain the Makin-Vlasov equation, the mean field equation. And then I will talk about briefly about well-posedness and about weak interaction. So for weak interaction, we have a general result, which is uniqueness of the invariant probability measure on convergence at exponential speed. Then I will discuss about stronger interactions. And in that case, we shall see that we have to restrict ourselves to local stability. And I will give a criteria which ensures that a given invariant probability measure is locally stable. And finally, we look at up bifurcations. So I will take an invariant probability measure for which the local stability criteria is violated. So the invariant probability measure is not locally stable. And I will discuss at which conditions this gives periodic solutions. And finally, I will conclude with a small example, an illustrative example for which, despite its simplicity, the dynamics is very rich, and there are many of bifurcations. It's quite interesting example. Okay, so let's start with the particle system. So we consider capital N neurons, which are characterized by their membrane potential. So it's a quantity which lives on R+. And so there are gonna be spikes, but between the spikes, the dynamics is very straightforward because each neuron evolves independently from the others following a deterministic ODE. So V dot equal B of V. So for instance, if B is constant, the potential of each neuron grows linearly between the spikes. And then there are gonna be spikes on each neuron I spikes randomly at a rate which depends on its potential. That means that for the probability that the I neuron spikes between t and t plus delta t, knowing the past, is equal to f of the I of t times dt. So that means that spikes occurs in exponential spikes occurs at exponential rates, exponentially distributed rates, but the rates depend on the potential, so such that the more your potential is the higher your potential, the greater you have chance to spike. And when a spike occurs, say I spike at time tau, first its membrane potential is instantaneously reset to 0. So at tau plus, you have a jump to 0 of the membrane potential. And at the same time, all the other neurons, they receive a kick in their membrane potential. And the size of the kick is given by the connectivity matrix GIG. And so, for instance, this is an illustration with two neurons. So you have the blue neuron, the red neuron. So in abscissa, this is time. And here, this is the membrane potential. So you see that at the beginning, each neuron follows its deterministic trajectory given by the ODE. And at some point here, the blue neuron is spiking. So it is instantaneously reset to 0. And at the exact same time, the red neuron receives a kick of the size given by the connectivity matrix. And then they continue, they follow the ODE. This time, this is the red neuron which spikes, and so on. All right. So to summarize, the model completely described by the following parameters. There is a drift B, which is a function from R plus to R. It gives the dynamics of the neurons between the spikes, so the deterministic dynamics. And we assume that bit 0 is strictly positive, such that when a neuron is spiking, it's reset to 0, and the drift push you to the right. And so the dynamics, with this assumption, the dynamics stay on R plus. So we can study only on R plus the dynamics of the membrane potential stay on R plus. Then we have the rate function, which is a function from R plus to R plus, where we assume it is non-decreasing, and it encodes the probability for a neuron at a given potential to spike at time t. We have the connectivity parameter, the connectivity matrix, and so we assume the weights are positive. And we have the law of the initial potential. So at t equal to 0, we assume that the neurons are distributed in a IID way with a common law nu. Yes, so if we want, there is a way to write this model in a single equation using Poisson measures. So if we take the Poisson measures on R plus time R plus with intensity du dz. So the idea is at each neuron, you associate a Poisson measures, and then you can write the membrane potential as a solution of this stochastic differential equation. So you have a system of n equations. So for instance, here you recognize the drift between the jumps. This term is the drift between the jumps. Here, this term says that when the neuron I is spiking, which occurs at rate f of its potential, we remove the value of its potential just before the spike, so we reset the potential to 0. So this is if you want, this is just a notation to describe the same model I presented you with capital N neurons. And so now we are ready to take the limit n goes to infinity. To describe formally the mean field equations. So we will make an assumptions to simplify. We'll assume that the weights are all equal to the same value, which is g divided by n. And g divided by n, this is the scaling of the law of large number. And if you assume that there is some propagation of chaos in this model of neurons, what you see that the blue term here, which is the term of the details interaction between the neurons, if you applied formally the law of large number, as n goes to infinity, it converges to this value. So g time the integral from 0 to t of expectation of f of vu. So in other words, the mean field equations, the mean field equations is given by this stochastic differential equations, which is the same that the only difference between v1 of t and v of t is that the details interactions here are replaced with this continuous quantity. And so V of t, if you want, this is the membrane potential of a typical neuron in the networks subject to the mean field interactions. And another completely equivalent way to understand this equation is just to say that between the jumps, Vt solve this ODE. So V dot equal B of Vt, this is the deterministic part given by the dynamics between the jumps, plus G time expectation of f of Vt. And this is the current of the mean field. This is the mean field current. And then Vt jumps to 0 with rate f of Vt. Right, so you still have the jumps to 0. Is that clear for now? And so the questions is, what can we say about this mean field equation, how to understand its long time behavior? Okay, so this kind of model, it has a long history. It was considered by many physicists since the 80s. And from a mathematical point of view, it was first presented in this paper by De Massy, Galvez, Locherbar, and Presutti, where they investigate propagation of chaos and they derive the mean field equations. And then there was this important paper by Nicolas Fournier and Eva Locherbar. So they gave the new results of propagation of chaos, and they study the long time behavior of the mean field model when b equal to 0. So when b equal to 0, the potential are constant between the spikes, and they prove that there is a unique stable invariant probability measure, whatever the size of the interactions. And then there was this paper by Drogul and Weltz, which shows that in a closed settings, the networks can oscillate. So this means that even though the dynamics is not very complicated for b equal to 0, we maybe for b I mean there is some the value of b matters. Okay, so I will discuss a bit about well-posedness of the limit equations and the case of weak interactions. So first, let me describe the difficulties. So all the difficulties, it's in the blue term, because this is the mean field terms. So if we understand the blue term, basically if we can prove that expectation of f of Vt, which is the mean number of spikes per unit of time of the networks, if we can prove that this quantity converge to a constant at exponential speed, basically we can deduce that Vt, the law of Vt, has to converge to the corresponding invariant probability measure. So all the difficulties, it's in this term because it's the term of Makin-Vlasov, and it depends on it depends not only on Vt but on the statistic of Vt through the expectations. So the first step is, because this is complicated like that, I will replace that. I will suppose that I know the interactions, and more precisely, I take a current A of t, an external current, and I start to study an isolated neuron subject to this deterministic current. So in other words, in Y of t, I have replaced the interaction by this deterministic current A. And now there is a simple but crucial remark, is to say that Y of t is a solution of the mean field equations if and only if the current AT satisfies this compatibility condition. So we require that the current A of t has to be equal to G times the spiking rate of Y. And this is S-glycine. If you want that the two blue terms to be equal, you need this quantity, you need this equality. And now there is a key tools here. Is a Volterra integral equations that I will describe briefly. So we will denote by Y A nu T S the membrane potential of an isolated neuron which receive the current A, the external current A, on which start at time S with law nu. And we define tau the time of the first jump of Y. We also define CANU, the density of the first of tau. So tau is a random variable, and we say k is its density. On RA, it's the jump rate of y. And now we have this integral equations which relays the two quantity, and I will explain. It's very simple. So RA of TS times dt, by definition, this is the probability to have at least one spike between t and t plus dt. So to obtain one spike within this bin, you have two options. Either this is the first spike, which means that there is no spike between S and T, and this occurs with probability. By definition of K, this occurs by probability CANU A of TS times dt. So this was the first possibility. The second possibility is that you have a first spike at time u, and then you do strong Markov. You use the strong Markov property at this time. Because you have a spike, you are reset to 0. And now the question is, okay, I start from 0, so Dirac mass at 0 at time u. What is the probability to have a spike between t and t plus delta t? And by definition, this is a renewal equation. If you want, this is RA delta 0 tu times dt. And if you write formally, if you write this argument, you will obtain this Volterra equation. This is nothing more. And yes, so to conclude with these equations, we then can prove, for instance, that the mean field equation is well posed using Picard arguments, where you considerate the iterate of n plus 1 equal, well, you consider, you do like a iteration procedure to prove the existence of well-posedness, existence and uniqueness to the Makin-Vlasov equation. So now we'll describe what are the invariant probability measure of this process. So we gonna play this game. So we take, we say, let's nu of t be an invariant probability measure of the nonlinear equations. And assume that V0, the initial condition, is taken under this invariant probability measure. Then the mean number of spikes per unit of time is constant because you are under this invariant probability measure. So this quantity, I called it alpha. But then nu of t is also an invariant probability measure to the linear process y alpha of t, where the interactions have been replaced by alpha. So what we do is that we first look at the invariant probability measure of this process, but this is a Markov process, so it's quite straightforward to compute its invariant probability measure. And we find these equations. We find that y alpha of t has a unique invariant probability measure, which is parameterized by alpha, and which is given by this formula. So, for instance, you see that it depends on f, on b, on alpha. So sigma alpha is the support of the invariant probability measure. And in fact, it depends on the first root of b plus alpha. So if b plus alpha does not has no roots on R étoile plus, the support is R plus, the whole R plus. If there is a root, the support is the first place where b plus alpha is equal to 0. And here gamma of alpha is a normalizing factor, such that we have a probability measure. Yes, and it's also we have these relations. If you compute the mean number of spikes per unit of time under this invariant probability measure, so you need to integrate f against this measure. And you see that you can integrate explicitly because you have f of x divided by b of x plus alpha, and this is the exact same term here. So you find gamma of alpha. In other words, gamma of alpha is also the mean number of spikes per unit of time. And so to conclude, if we go back to the nonlinear process, the invariant measures, invariant probability measures are exactly the nu infini alpha for which alpha satisfies this compatibility condition, alpha equal g times gamma of alpha. If you want those two terms to be equal, because gamma of alpha is expectation of f against nu infini alpha, you need these relations to hold. So in particular, for the nonlinear equation, there is not necessarily uniqueness. If there are different value of alpha for which this holds, you have multiple invariant probability measures. Okay. So nevertheless, we have results for weak enough interactions. So what we can prove is that if G is small enough, then there is uniqueness of the invariant probability measure, and this probability measure is globally attractive, which means that if you start from any initial condition with probability nu, Vt converge to the unique invariant probability measure, and the convergence is exponentially fast. But this is only for G small enough. So the results say, okay, if we fix B on F, there is a G star of B of F such that for all G smaller than G star, we have uniqueness of the invariant probability measure and convergence to it. So now the question is, if you are interested, this is published in this paper. So now the question is, what can we say for stronger interactions? Which is probably more interesting. And well, first I will start with a simple example. So I will take B of x equal mu minus x with mu equal 0.1 and f of x equal x times x to the power 2. And so we want to compute the invariant probability measures. So I recall that those are given by the nu infini alpha for which alpha satisfies this equality. So G equal alpha divided by gamma de alpha. So what I'll do is I plot the function alpha divided by gamma of alpha with respect to alpha. And what we see is that the function is increasing, then decreasing, and increasing. So in other words, there is constant G1 and G2, such that for G smaller than G1, we have a unique invariant probability measure. For G bigger than G2, we have a unique invariant probability measure. But for G in the middle, if you choose G between G1 and G2, there are 3 invariant probability measures because there are 3 solutions to this equation. And under the three, we can study numerically what happens, and it seems that the middle one is unstable while the 2 others are locally stable. But this example suggests that because there might be multiple invariant probability measures, to say something, we have to restrict ourselves to local stability. So another example is this one. So you take B of x equal 2 minus 2x and f of x equal x to the power 10. So x to the power 10, this is something to have like threshold effects, such that when x is smaller than 1, f of x is approximately null, and so the neuron does not spike. And when x is greater than 1, this is huge and it will spike with high probability. So this is for mimicking threshold effects. So we can show by the same previous arguments that in that case there is always exactly one invariant probability measure, which means that the function is increasing, if you want. But when G is between those two values, it seems from numerical simulations that the law oscillates. So I'm gonna show you I have a video for that. Can you see it? So this is sorry. So this is a simulations of the particle systems. And you see that at t equal to 0, the neurons are drawn from an IID way with a distribution which is a uniform distribution between 0 and 1. And this is for G equals 0.8, so we are in the regime of oscillations, and you will see what happens. This is something like that. And the networks oscillate like that. So we see oscillation of the law. So this is spontaneous oscillations, and this is what we really want to understand better. Okay, I go back to my slide. Ah non, j'ai raté. Je crois que je dois faire ça. Okay, do you see? Okay, so stability of local stability of an invariant probability measure. So first we need to define a distance between probability measure, and here I will choose a total variation distance with weight f square. And we say that the invariant probability measure is locally exponentially stable with rate lambda if, when you start from an initial condition nu, which is close enough to the invariant probability measure, the mean field interaction term converge to the good constant at speed exponential of lambda t. And now the result is the following. So we take nu infini alpha, an invariant probability measure, and we want to know if it's locally stable or not. And we define this function, theta of t, which is the sensibility integrated against the invariant probability measure. And so Rx alpha of t, this is the jump rate of an isolated neuron which receive a constant current equal to alpha, and which start at time 0 with potential x. And so you compute this function, you take its derivative with respect to the initial condition x, and you form theta of t. And now the stability conditions involve the Laplace transform of theta. So what we can prove is that when this holomorphic functions has all its 0 with real part negative, then local stability holds, and the rate of convergence is given by the abscissa of the first 0 on the left half plane. So in other words, stability is given by the Laplace transform of this function. And here, Rx alpha of t, this is given by the jump rate of an isolated neuron. So no interactions. So this is why this result is interesting, because it depends only on the linear process. Rx alpha of t, I repeat, it's really an isolated neuron. And first of, in some situation, we can prove that the criteria is satisfied. For instance, if f plus b prime is positive on the support of the invariant probability measure, so if f plus b prime is positive, then we can prove the criteria is satisfied, and so the invariant probability measure is locally stable. And it seems that f plus b prime equal to 0 is the limiting case for which, in fact, the invariant probability measure it's uniform on 0 sigma alpha. So ready. So okay, but now I can talk about periodic solutions. Sorry. Okay, so I go back to my example. F of x equal x to the power 10, and b of x equal 2 minus 2x. And I look at the zero of these functions, these holomorphic functions, which gives the stability. And you see that for g equals 0.5, all the roots have a negative real part. So the invariant probability measure is locally stable. But when I increase g, here what happens? So this is for g equals 0.7, we have a pair of imaginary roots. And for g equals 0.85, we have a pair of solutions with a real part. So here we don't have stability anymore. And for these examples, we can plot the complete a more complete bifurcation diagram. So in abscissa, this is G, the interaction parameters. And here, this is the interaction term under the stationary regime, if you want. So the black curves here, it corresponds to the invariant probability measures. So when it's in dots, it means that it's unstable. The criteria is not satisfied. The stability criteria is not satisfied. And within those two values, we have numerically a periodic solution. So what I report here is I compute for each value of G the periodic solution, and I report the maximal amplitude and the minimal amplitude of the current. So this is a deterministic current, and I report the maximum and the minimum amplitude, and I see this curve, which is a trace of the orbit, if you want. And interestingly, if you take a solution, for instance, if you take G equals 0.8 and you consider a periodic solution, if you compute the mean number of spikes over a period, you will end up exactly on this curve, on the curve of the invariant measure. So this is a key property that we use in the proof. So the theorem is the following. So we need spectral assumptions. So we assume that nu infini alpha 0 is an invariant probability measure for the nonlinear equations. So we assume that we have a pair of imaginary roots. So the invariant probability measure is not, the criteria of stability is violated with this pair of imaginary roots. We assume that the zeros are simple zero of the holomorphic function. We assume that there is no other zeros on the line, imaginary line. And we assume further that when alpha varies, the zeros cross the imaginary axis with non-vanishing speed, which means that exactly like on this figure, you see that the zero here, it's cross the imaginary axis with a non-vanishing speed. So we need these assumptions, and we can formalize that using the implicit function theorem. And under those assumptions, what we have is that we can prove the existence of a family of periodic solutions. So we have a curve of 2p tau v periodic solutions, which are parameterized by v. And those are periodic solutions of the Makin-Vlasov equations. What can we say? Some remarks. So this curve, it passes through, when you take v equal to 0, you recover the invariant probability measure, which is unstable. We have so we can prove that those periodic solutions are unique in the neighborhood of the invariant probability measure up to a translation phase, because obviously if you translate your solution by a phase, you still have a periodic solution. So this is uniqueness up to translation. If we define the periodic current AV of t, so this is so you take your periodic solutions and you compute the mean number of spikes at time t. So this is a periodic current. And if you compute the mean over a period, it's equal to alpha v. This is exactly the mean of the current under the invariant measure. So this is the property I described you earlier. And finally, V here, it has an interpretation. So this is a parameter of my family of solutions, but really it's the amplitude. It's linked with the amplitude of the oscillations. So when V equal to 0, if you want, the amplitude is null, and when you increase V, you increase the amplitude of the periodic solutions. Well. So if you are interested to these constructions, you can look at the paper on arXiv. And I will end up briefly with an example. Sorry. The simple example. So we choose b of x equal m minus x and f of x equal 0 between when x is less than 1 and 1 over beta when x is greater than 1. So this is really close to the examples Christophe showed to the model Christophe showed us yesterday. So when the membrane potential is less than 1, neurons cannot spike. And when the neurons are the membrane potential are greater than 1, neurons can spike at rate 1 over beta. And between the jumps, you have a drift which is given by m minus x. So you have two parameters, m and beta. And it turns out that for these examples, we can compute all the up bifurcations, because if we do this change of variables, omega and delta, then the equations which give the stability of an invariant probability measures, it's quite simple. And this is given by these equations, which is explicitly known in terms of delta, omega, and beta. And for instance, what we can do is that we can compute all the imaginary solutions. So all the solutions with imaginary roots, and we can so we can prove that we can parameterize those solutions, and we obtain this parameterized curve. So each point of the curve is basically a up bifurcations. So you see that despite this model is very simple, it has a lot of up bifurcations if you choose correctly the parameters. And for instance, so what we can do is that we can zoom in the limit when beta equal to 0. For instance, we can follow the red point here. And we can prove that when beta goes to 0, we find first up bifurcations at this value of g. So we can link to the parameter of the model. And we can compute the period. This is log of m divided by m minus 1 plus beta. And we can check, basically we can check all the assumptions of the theorem with this example. All right, I will stop there. So just to summarize, so we have derived the mean field equation for Makin-Vlasov for the system of particles. This is a Makin-Vlasov equations, and we studied its long-time behavior. key tool is the Volterra integral equation I show you. When G is small enough, we have a general result, which is relaxation to equilibrium. For G is stronger, we need spectral conditions which ensure the local stability. And finally, we can study up bifurcations in the neighborhood of an unstable invariant probability measures. And to conclude with some open questions. So I think it would be particularly interesting to understand better the long-time behavior of the finite particle system. So in some sense, this is much more simpler because we expect that the finite particle system is ergodic, so it should have a unique invariant probability measure. But what we observe is that, as Christophe described it yesterday, there might be metastable properties, which means that finite particle systems spend a lot of times close to this invariant probability measure. And so it would be interesting to better understand that in particular. So maybe we can write a large deviation principles from the finite particle system to the mean field equations, and or study the fluctuations. And that would be very interesting, but I don't know how to do it. So if you know, tell me. And another directions will be what happens for heterogeneous networks. So you know that in real biology, there are not only excitatory, but also inhibitory neurons. So it will be very interesting to understand the role of those inhibitory neurons. And another way to tackle this problem is to better understand what happens for random weights between the neurons. For instance, if the connectivity matrix is given by a graphon, so then this graphon it will stay at the mean field limit. So so you will keep a trace of the graph at the limit, and you will obtain a new mean. In that case, you will obtain a new mean field limit, and it would be interesting to understand how this affects the long-time behavior. Thank you. I hope I am in time.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Quentin. So do we have any question for Quentin?
Okay, maybe I begin with the questions again.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so concerning the study of the Hopf bifurcation, of course, the stability problem is a problem in infinite dimension, right? Because you're so typically when you study the linear stability, you identify a small dimensional subspace in which the really interesting things happen. Is that true? Is that what you do?
Exactly. I did not have the time to explain the proof, but the proof is exactly that. We use the Lyapunov-Schmitz method to reduce the problem to a problem of dimension 2. And the dimension 2 is the dimension of the. So you see that the stability criteria, it involves the roots of an holomorphic functions. And we assume that we have a pair of imaginary roots, which are simpler roots. So it gives a subspace of dimension 2, and we basically reduce the dynamics to this subspace. And well, we translate the problem to a problem of dimension 2, and then we study it. I don't know if it's
no, that's well, I suggest that maybe, I mean, by the identification of this two-dimensional subspace, presumably you could also control the fluctuations at the critical points, because the fluctuations at the Hopf bifurcation are rather tricky, and if you are in an infinite dimension, this is very hard. But if you can really reduce the problem to 2 dimensions, I guess that you can even control that on that model. That's a very, very interesting model. I really like very much.
Yes, thank you for this advice. But to be honest, there is for instance, I am not able to prove that I am not able to study the stability of these periodic solutions. I can only prove existence, because what you suggest, I think, is to really project the dynamics within a space of dimension 2, right? Using but that I don't know how to do it.
Well, something like that. But I mean, to control fluctuations at the critical point is much easier in general than proving stability of periodic solutions.
Ah, okay.
Because so you really only look at the critical point in which you have no yet periodic solution. And, you know, this some rotation invariance is only seen in terms of fluctuations. But that's a very vague suggestion. So I'm not saying that I could do that, but just saying that if you can control, if you can reduce to a small dimensional space, one could have hope to control fluctuations too.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other question? Lorraine?
Yes, sorry. Yeah. Yes, I wanted to know if you have an intuitive explanation of this criteria of local stability, the fact that f plus b prime must be positive. Can you explain in terms of the drift? So it is in terms of the derivative of the drift. So in some sense, the acceleration matters.
Yes, I know I don't have, well, what I understood is that there is some competitions between B and F, such that if B and F are such that F plus B prime is positive, nothing interesting happens. But this is all, and maybe there is some things to do here to better understand that. But to be honest, I don't know.
Okay, and I also have a question concerning this M. So in your two examples, you have B of X is a different M minus something times X.
Yes.
So I saw, so in the criteria of local stability, it doesn't involve this M, as this is the derivative, but your results say that M should be related to the period, oscillating period, right? So
yes.
do you see actually different periods for the two examples you showed?
When you vary M, you have different periods, yes. When you vary M or you vary G or beta, it will change the period. And in fact, maybe I can share my slides again. Yes, maybe I was not clear here, but the criteria you have to look at is really the stability criteria is this one, because here this does not apply because B prime is equal to -1 and F is null between 0 and 1. So this corollary does not apply. And so the stability is really given. You need really to compute.
You mean it doesn't apply in which case? In the two examples in the beginning?
When, for instance, when B of X equal M minus X, you have B prime, which is equal to -1. Mm-hmm. So it does not apply. So really you need to focus on these guys. And these guys, it really depends on M, G, on F, on beta. I don't know if it's answer.
Okay, yes, because there are several parameters which change between the two examples, not just one. So I tried to understand.
Yes, and if you well, but I was quite impressed by this toy model, because even though it's quite simple, you see it has many of bifurcations if you choose correctly the parameter. So yeah.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I see it's 2 p.m. minus 4 minutes. So maybe if we want some break, I propose to postpone the questions to the discussion section. All right. So maybe we have a 4-minute break, and